Batman Cape Crusader is damn good. Man, is that nice to say. Back-to-back DC videos where I can just say, hey, how good is this? This new Batman animated series is once again from the minds of Bruce Timm, James Tucker, and well, what seems like half of Hollywood. J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves also helped out, and an assortment of others were also involved in producing this series. I can't really talk about this new show without getting into the behind-the-scenes nature of its creation, with it going from being a HBO Max show to somehow being on Amazon Prime. After 31 years since the original show aired, we have another Batman show with Bruce Timm at the helm. With shows like X-Men 97 and so many movies and shows going back to the 90s, bringing these icons of the past into the modern era of comic adaptations. Warner Brothers were also asking questions around whether or not more seasons of Batman the Animated Series would be possible. This, however, was not something Bruce Timm would be interested in at all, saying, nah, we'd been there and we'd done that. Though, while still being in talks to do some kind of new DC show, maybe a new Justice League cartoon, apparently their talks always came back to Batman. Then comes the seriously interesting part. Weren't there some things that you did not get to do back in the day that you would like to have done? The answer, of course, was yes. That is Batman Caped Crusader through and through. While the 90s show was great and arguably the best depiction of the character ever, with the best representation of his rogues and supporting cast, many things just weren't allowed to be done back then, or creative decisions were just off limits. Firefly was one of the major Batman villains not to be introduced in Batman the Animated Series. The producers had intended to use Firefly in an episode of the original series, but Fox wouldn't allow it due to his pyromaniac nature. This, however, changed when moving to the sequel show on the new network with The New Adventures of Batman on Warner Bros. Kids. There was a sense of that the job wasn't finished.
Job's not finished. Job finished? I don't think so.
There was more to tell, and in new and fresh ways, and for a character as old as Batman, it is stuff like this that he needs from time to time. People will bitch and moan that Harley Quinn is different in this show, but if you honestly just want to see the animated series version of her, then watch that. Only way these characters stay relevant is by making them short, true to their original versions, while also finding ways to introduce new ideas. Then the next group of creatives can run with what did and didn't work in that attempt, like honestly compare Margot Robbie's version to the original and say they are the exact same character. Through evolution and attempts to create something new, more people now associate the blonde hair with blue and pink tips with the character than the jester outfit from the past. Sadly, people aren't as optimistic as me, or well, I'll just say it bluntly, there are a lot of bums being butthurt on Twitter that some of the characters they like are now people of color, and they aren't their type to get off to.
What are we... Why? Penguin goes around flirting with everyone despite the fact that she looks like the back end of a cow.
Like, normally I wouldn't be so direct in my examples, but going through this guy's video is hilarious.
Is that supposed to be intimidating? Actually, considering it's a woman being Penguin, she probably thinks that is intimidating.
32 minutes of moaning about just the first episode. It really showcases how people consume their art nowadays. Like, oh no, they made Penguin a woman! The horror! This type of stuff is pathetic to see. The blend of nitpicking and sexism acting as real critique is generally outstanding lately, because something being long doesn't give it validity. There is nothing wrong with giving genuine criticism. What frustrates me is I see the first couple minutes of this video and it's a compilation of the classic hits. You bundle this with reviews that use buzzwords like D.E.I and think that captures any idea what is actually wrong with the show. And bonus, that is the only rotten review on Rotten Tomatoes. The Batman had Jeffrey Wright play Gordon, and since that is the latest huge Batman movie to come out, some choices will trickle down to animated movies. That is always how it goes. And hell, Matt Reeves is working on this show. It makes no sense to complain about that. Also, look at everything Disney does with making their animated projects look like the MCU. And if Gordon is going to be a person of color, well, it also makes sense that his daughter is a person of color. It's lazy criticism, and when there is genuine shit to complain about, it's so tiresome. Like, fuck, It is so boring.
I'd also like to point out that these are men on screen, because when the women are on screen, they also look the same. Everyone is built like a linebacker. The width of some of these women's shoulders, you're wondering how on earth they fit through a door.
That is the line that I want to bring up quickly, because it's actually a positive for the show. All the female characters aren't the smallest waists you'll ever see on TV, with pointy triangle boobs that are always very hypersexualized all the time. The women in the show actually feel like the most authentic and developed here. I dive into it later, but Barbara, Detective Montoya, and Harley genuinely stand out. But oh no, people of color, gotta rage bait now and say Batman gone woke. Somehow I've gotta find a way to just smush Brie Larson into this and put her on the thumbnail. However, to move on from that, most of the reception has been good online. With the second season already on the way, it's honestly, besides all the stuff I said before, it's been nice to talk about this show on Twitter. It's nice to have more DC content to talk about, discussing what we actually liked or didn't like, seeing new versions of these characters, pitching ideas, who we'd like to see in season 2. That is fun. That's really fun. And it's this part of being a part of the fandom that I enjoy being a part of. Let's dive straight into the good of Batman Caped Crusader. There is a lot to like. The most important is their goal of making a more horror and noir focused show. That feels to me absolutely nailed. I mentioned in previous videos when talking about DC that the best part of the animation as a medium is that you can nail any specific style that you want to do easily, and from there you can do whatever you want. The show embraces its setting. From the look of Gotham City, its cars, their technology, all of it embraces this timeless feel of being in the early days of Batman comics. A Batman that wears gloves, a Batman that dabbles in the fantasy but revels in the true crime nature of Gotham's underbelly. The tone is nailed in capturing what they are going for. Each episode plays as a specific tale, a vignette for each villain to showcase who they are and what makes them different to before. While this is very much still a Batman, and a Batman from a mind we've seen tell stories for 30 years, it does indeed feel new and worth watching. The villains are something to really talk about. Clayface, Harley, and Nocturna. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but they absolutely are the standouts. With Nocturna being someone I didn't remember appearing in the original show, to someone where I'd argue she's the strongest antagonist out of everyone in the 10 episodes that we have, leading to what I can safely say is one of the best Batman moments we have had in years. Up there with Pattinson's Batman leading to people out onto the, from the water onto the roof. The impact this little sequence had was so profound, and it's moments like this that weren't what I was expecting at all. In what was a typical Batman fighting the antagonist moment, I thought this would be another villain undone by their hubris and dies by their weakness, leaving our hero with guilt, but not really. It's something they can move on from, with the occasional thought of, man, I could have done something to save them, but oh well. But no, it doesn't cop out like that.
We have to get you out of the sun.
Just go! Leave me alone!
We get a scene that is similar to Batman carrying out Ace from Justice League Unlimited, where he does end up being able to save this girl from a situation that very much got out of hand. It's a very nuanced moment that leads to a Batman that is more than, if I just use my fists real good, evil will cease to exist. To me, that is always going to lead to a more interesting story than the latter. The entire supporting cast is actually so good. I mentioned some earlier, but the entire GCPD are their usual selves, corrupt and fully involved in crime. It's not my favorite interpretation, but that bar is so high over the decades of different versions, there is enough here for me to go, hell yeah, this rocks. Barbara spends a lot of time being the opposite of Dent in a lot of ways, but best of all, the Batman-Batgirl ship is dead in the waters. Pause to read the entire thing here, but from the man himself, no Babs Bruce ship, so that one review there was a review that came out before the show, and it was just, read it on screen, not cool to do that to Batman fans. That's fucking not on. Unlike most of the DC animated works as of late, bar My Adventures with Superman, most projects have felt aimless in their direction. They don't feel as if they have any sense of real vision for tone or how to make an impactful image. At every point, this show aims to stun with its visual sequences that really make me happy that it just exists. The intro alone sets such a large impression. I adore this so much, with it all being capped off with a stunning final send-off for Bats. Though I am really happy with this show, there are some things I gotta mention that aren't all too great. While there is a lot of aspects to the art direction that I love, coming from something like X-Men 97, it's a bit rough to have the show feel as stiff as this for the majority of it. I feel like the deep blacks of the original show are missing from Caped Crusader. With the animated series' use of strong colors to make the contrast really stand out, blues, reds, whatever it be, artistically it's a direction that I find that leaves a much stronger impression. Whereas Caped Crusader aims to have everything be a lot more muted, from Batman being mostly grey, and most characters coming across as flat. Any side by side, my biggest note is, where is the color? And I know they're trying to go for this gothic horror tone, but color isn't the opposite of noir. No one has ever come out of a noir thriller, like a horror thriller, and turned away to say, fuck mate, there's a bit too much color here, hey. Another thing to mention is, sadly, for me, while the music fits the noir setting, and while comparing to Shirley Walker isn't fair, and to ever expect that level of a score would be silly, I don't think there is anything here that is memorable of a theme for anyone. Like, I want to do just a side-by-side here of a scene from this show and compare what it would be like if there was a theme from the animated series here. I know it's small, and composer Frederick Wiedemann has worked on DC animated works for literally years. While not being the biggest thing in the world, when it comes to characters like Batman or your Spider-Mans and Supermans, the bar is astronomically high. So when bringing out something new, it's always going to be put up against previous works. Most probably don't care, but to me, it's just so fucking important. Like, it's really important to me. Something much larger than just the music being kinda mid. This note is probably either my biggest or second biggest criticism of the entire show. And that is, much of the emotional moments or arcs that are meant to leave you feeling anything don't really land as hard as I think the show would have liked. And in comparison to a lot of the previous interpretations such as Clayface, while Clayface is really cool here, in most case scenarios, they are just a lot less engaging when put next to each other. There is a ton of new here, yes, absolutely, and while the emotional beats land 10 times harder than the DC films as of late, after 10 episodes, I still don't feel as emotionally connected or invested as I think I should be. Which the main culprit is for me, my main gripe with the show has got to do with the character of the Batman. The way they write Bruce is interesting. His arc is very much so in the background. They take the Batman in his early days, he didn't work well with others, and turn that dial to the max. It kinda threw me when he said Pennyworth and treated Alfred like shit. His whole arc is one we have seen in other places, though it was done, I guess you can say nicely here. Just he is one of the least interesting characters in his own show. And with him almost treating Bruce as the Mask, it means he is rather shallow at this point in time. He goes to therapy with Harleen, which could have been really fucking cool. However, it only lasts an episode or two from memory, and he refuses to take anything on board, so bar a few lines here and there, if anything, it only gives us clarity on just how bad Bruce is with his mask, and how deep that trauma is. Sadly, it takes the entire season to make what is relatively a small step forward. I don't hate what they do with him here. It's just, as he is the main character, I just think the material he should have would have a bit more meat on its bones. To only really get that one arc in the background, I am just clawing to get more. The voice acting and the way Batman interacts with everyone is beyond stellar. This is Batman for sure. Just after 31 years and his first proper animated title in quite a while, you'd think Batman would have more to do. For season 2, I would love for them to take on some of the weak points I have said here and really run with it. Season 1 had a lot of villains, and for so many of them, they did amazingly. With Season 2, I would love to see them do villains such as Scarecrow and really tap into how the horror element in the 1940s would work. Like working in the shadows, like a Jack the Ripper type thing. Or to do a Bane who's a mastermind rather than just a brute. But what would you want to see from Season 2 of Batman Caped Crusader? What are the villains you want to see? Let me know down below. And what have you thought of all the DC content as of late? Deciding what to cover has been a little tough because we're doing so much more compared to last year, but with how long videos take to make, watching entire shows and between making videos can be kind of tough. All I want to do is release as many videos as I can, but with a full-time job, it's just, yeah, it can be rough at times. If you guys can help out in any way by sharing this around, or if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do that. Or lastly, and very much the most impactfully, to support our Patreon. That will allow me to pay for more editors to spread the workload off of myself. We can continuously pump out more videos. Other than that, I just have to thank my current patrons. In the top mate tier, we have Nick. In the great mate tier, we have Colin and CJ. And for the good mate tier, we have Jadu Sable. If you are interested in some of the perks we offer, please make sure to follow the link in the description down below. Anyways, thank you for watching today's video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Woo, done.